Welcome back, YouTube. Today we're going to walk through whether or not fast or slow rates of progress, rates of fat loss, is going to be best for you. A common question I get asked is how fast or how quick should I be losing body fat, dropping weight? Okay, now I'm going to walk you through in this video the things you need to weigh up to determine whether a faster or slower rate of progress, rate of fat loss is going to be best for you. If you do find this video helpful, please do drop a like. If you have any questions throughout, throw them down below. I'll get back to you. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe because it helps me out a ton and it helps keep you up to date with videos that are going to help you with your goal. Okay, so fast rate of progress or slow rate of progress with fat loss comes down to two main factors, which we're going to talk about right now. That first factor being your current percentage of body fat that you are holding. And the simple rule of thumb here is the more body fat you're holding, so the higher percentage body fat you have, the higher the rate of loss that you can aim for and go for. Okay, so if you're holding more body fat, you can try and push for a faster rate of loss. The less amount of body fat you have, or the leaner you are, the slower the rate of loss you should be aiming for. Okay, now the main reason for this is as you get leaner, you run the risk, if the size of your deficit is bigger, which it needs to be to increase rate of loss, you run the risk of losing more muscle mass. Whereas when you've got higher percentage body fat, you can likely have a faster rate of loss, a bigger deficit, and not run that risk of losing muscle mass. So essentially, when you've got more body fat, you can, have a bigger deficit and go for a bigger rate of loss without really worrying about it having any sort of setbacks with your overall goal, your long-term goal. Whereas when you're leaner and, we're getting to the point where you're getting towards that end goal, you're getting to the point where, you're not really going to want to lose much more body fat. We want to slow it down then because you might run the risk of, losing some muscle mass and then eating up into that long-term goal. Okay. That goal that you might have of actually, being concerned about your appearance, wanting to retain as much muscle mass as you can. You might then run the risk of eating up into that. So the higher percentage body fat, the higher the rate of loss. The lower percentage body fat, the lower rate of loss. That's the one first factor we have to take into account. Now, talking about exactly, what percentage of body fat, it essentially comes down to a guesstimate, okay? I would say for a high percentage body fat, I'd say anywhere above, let's say, 15% body fat. Again, 15 is just a number, but you can maybe go online and you can look up body fat percentage scales and to get like a visual idea. But maybe anywhere above like 15-ish, you can run the rate up and try and get a faster rate of loss. Maybe when we're getting below 50, maybe start slowing it down a little bit, just to make sure that we're being safe with retention of muscle mass. Okay, and then the other factor we have to take into consideration is how difficult is it going to be for us to manage and sustain that rate of loss that we're after. Okay, so if we're wanting to get a quick fat loss response, okay, we want to go for a fast fat loss response, that is going to require a bigger deficit. The bigger the deficit gets, the harder that is going to be to manage and sustain, okay? Now, the reason why this is important to take into consideration is because if you can't manage and sustain your deficit, if you can't be consistent with it, then it's just not worth doing because you're not going to get the results, right? If you can't be consistent with it, doesn't matter if you're pushing for a fast fat loss response, you're not going to get a fast fat loss response because you can't sustain it. So you have to be able to make sure that the rate you are going for, you can sustain. And like I said, the faster that is, the harder it's going to be. The slower that is, the easier it's going to be. Okay? As a deficit gets bigger, stuff like hunger management is going to be harder to manage. Energy levels might get lower. Mood might get worse. sleep might start taking a hit. And if we're not good at managing those things, then we might struggle. So, in terms of knowing how well you're going to be able to manage those things, it's going to come down to, various factors. One, if you've done that before, obviously if you've done that before and you've got those skills, you know what to expect, you've got the experience, then you're probably going to be fine. Two, trial and error. If you want to go for a fast fat loss response, go for it. But if you get there and you're just like, I can't sustain this, then pull back a little bit. So you're still, trying to push for a faster response, but you're pulling back to a point where you're trying to make sure you can still sustain and be consistent with it. And then three, just being realistic and understanding what you're trying to achieve. If you want to get, let's say, 3 pounds a loss per week, but it's just not sustainable and you can't be consistent with it, then that's just how it is. And you maybe have to settle for a £2 or a £1 loss a week, but also understand that consistent losses per week, is good rates of loss, and you shouldn't be too concerned or worried about that. So there you have it. They're the two biggest factors that you need to take into consideration when it comes to whether you're trying to get a fast or a slow fat loss response. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, please drop a like. If you have any questions, throw them down below and I'll get back to you. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. I'll catch you on the next one.